The signal came without warning, faint, broken, haunting. It echoed through the cold dark of deep space, crossing thousands of light years before Earth's deep space listening posts caught it. The sound was filled with Pharalian voices crying for help in a language machines barely translated. What mattered wasn't the words. It was the terror in the sound. A terror that chilled the bones of the men and women who first heard it. Something was very wrong out there. Something ancient. Something deadly. The message wasn't a call for friendship, it was a scream. A last breath. And when Earth heard it, they didn't hesitate. Earth's fleet, massive, silent, and merciless, was launched because Earth had learned the hard way in the dark places between the stars. Mercy was death. The ships moved like silent shadows across the void. Sleek black holes of armored steel, bristling with weapons built not just to kill, but to erase. The people of Earth were no longer explorers, or survivors. They were warriors. The rest of the galaxy called them Deathworlders, not with respect, but with fear. And when the fleet moved, the galaxy watched, because when Earth answered a distress signal, it was not always to save. Sometimes it was to end something so terrible, so dangerous, that no other species dared act. And so Earth's war fleet burned toward the source of the signal, their orders cold and clear. Find the source, assess the threat, and if needed, destroy everything. Admiral Kayla Voss stood on the bridge of the flagship, the dreadnought Titans. Wrath. Her eyes were hard, her face stone, lit by the cold glow of data screens. The signal played again in her earpiece. It didn't matter how many times she heard it, sent shivers down her spine every time. Her crew watched her carefully. They knew what she was. They knew what this mission meant. There would be no rescue, unless she decided it was safe. And in her years of service, it was rarely safe. "We don't come to make friends," she whispered, barely audible. "We come to survive." Her voice, though soft, held the weight of steel. The planet came into view days later. A dying world. The fleet dropped from faster-than-light speed into orbit, and what they saw made even the hardened veterans pause. The surface was broken, blackened, fires still burned in shattered cities, mountains looked torn open, oceans boiled in places, poisoned with chemicals, and in the darkness, scattered here and there, were signs of life, small, flickering signals, barely alive. The alien message was coming from one of those points, but no one on the bridge spoke. No one said it aloud, but they were all thinking the same thing. Was this a disaster? Or was this a trap? The first scans came in. The survivors were weak, their energy signatures faint. The creatures were small, frail by human standards. Their bodies were covered in soft fur, large expressive eyes, nothing like the monstrous creatures Earth's soldiers had fought in other wars. But something was wrong. The planet's destruction wasn't natural. It was surgical. It was violent. Whole cities erased with precision. And the soil was moving in places, breathing as if the land itself was alive. The Admiral ordered. Silence. No landing parties yet. No contact. Not until more was known. She knew what the others feared but would not say. Something hunted this world. Something that killed without mercy. And whatever it was, it might not be gone. From the dark reaches of space, the signal kept calling. Over and over. Weak, desperate, broken. It was like listening to a ghost. The translation A has worked endlessly, trying to pull meaning from the fractured alien words. At last, a rough sentence came through, simple but chilling. Help us, or we all die. The bridge fell silent. The Admiral closed her eyes. She had heard those words before. Long ago, on other worlds, and every time, it ended the same. Fire, ash, death. Hours passed. Probes were sent down tiny black machines with cameras and sensors. The images came back in fragments, twisted wreckage, burned bodies, creatures. That looked alien but familiar in their fear. Then something else. Movement, shapes in the mist. The probes vanished one by one. Signals cut. Static. The room's tension grew sharp as a blade. Admiral Voss spoke at last. "Prepare the Marines." Her voice was flat, calm. The fleet's next move was clear. Boots on the ground, eyes on the enemy. But in her heart, she knew. This mission would not end with a handshake. It would end in fire. The dropships launched sleek black daggers slicing through the sky. Inside, the Marines sat silent. There, faces cold, their armor thick, their weapons ready. Each one knew what Earth was, what they were. No other species in the galaxy sent humans unless they meant to finish a fight. No half measures, no second chances. The signal kept playing in their helmets. That broken voice, that haunting cry, it clawed at their minds. The pilots said nothing as they descended through the toxic clouds. The sky was gray. Lightning flickered. The ground below looked dead. But something moved in the shadows, watching, waiting. When the first squad touched down, the air was heavy, burnt metal, silence. The ruins of a city stretched before them, blackened. Bones of buildings, shattered streets. In the distance, a flicker of movement, small figures, hunched, barely standing. The aliens, the source of the signal. Marines advanced slowly, rifles raised, visors scanning. But deep beneath their boots in the cracked soil, something ancient stirred. The dirt shifted. Something alive moved just under the surface. A sound barely heard, like breathing. The squad leader raised a fist. "Something's wrong," he muttered. His voice was tense. The aliens didn't move, didn't speak. Their eyes, wide, unblinking, were filled with terror. Not at the humans. At something else, something behind them. One Marine adjusted his visor. "I'm picking movement," he whispered. "Underground." The words barely left his mouth before the ground itself erupted. Screams filled the coms. The squad vanished from the feed in seconds. Static, then nothing. Silence. The Admiral's eyes turned cold as ice. She didn't blink. She knew what came next. Her voice was steel. "Deploy full combat teams. Prepare for planetary cleansing." The words were mechanical. Final. Because Earth didn't take chances. The signal kept playing in the darkness. But now, Earth had answered. The night on the dying world felt endless. The Marines moved through the ruins like shadows, their footsteps crunching softly over broken stone and ash. Every soldier knew the rules. Stay sharp, trust nothing, shoot if you have to. But no amount of training could erase the growing unease that crept into their bones. It was the silence that struck first. The deep, suffocating stillness of a planet that felt wrong, like the land itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to move, something to strike. They found the first body near dawn, or at least what was left of it. The missing squad, those brave Marines who had vanished hours before, had been found, but they were not the same. Their armor was ripped open in ways no weapon should have been able to do. Their faces were locked in expressions of frozen terror, and their eyes were black, empty, and wrong. The medics didn't even try to help. There was nothing left to save. Whatever had killed them hadn't just ended their lives. It had twisted them into something monstrous. The soldiers stood in tense silence, rifles raised, scanning every shadow. The alien survivors huddled together nearby, their trembling bodies pressed to the ground as if even looking at the dead humans was too much for them to bear. One alien, its voice barely above a whisper, spoke through the translator. The words were simple, broken, but the meaning was clear. It eats inside, becomes them, not dead, never dead. A chill ran through the squad. The commander, a hardened veteran named Sergeant Hale, clenched his jaw. He'd seen combat on Death World-class planets before. He'd fought monsters. But this was different. He ordered a perimeter setup. Automated turrets armed, heavy weaponry deployed. The soldiers obeyed without question. Fear or not, they were Earth's finest, and Earth did not run above. In the cold black of orbit, Admiral Voss watched the live feeds with icy calm. The images told her everything. Whatever was down there wasn't just another alien threat. It was worse. a hidden infection. A predator that didn't just kill, but consumed, copied, controlled. She thought of the story's old military reports, buried in classified vault tales of worlds lost to creatures that could wear the faces of the dead. Her fingers tapped slowly against the console. The fleet was ready. Nuclear warheads, orbital, lasers, kinetic strikes. She could end it. She could burn the entire surface to ash. But something held her back. The signal, the call for help. Why call for help? If there was no one left to save, on the surface, the soldiers pushed deeper into the ruins. The morning light barely touched the shattered streets. Fog rolled between crumbling towers. The alien survivors, thin, weak, barely alive, led them toward what they called the heart, a place, they said, where it had all begun. But there, eyes spoke louder than their words. They were terrified. Terrified not just of death, but of something worse. The squad moved carefully, weapons raised. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound echoed too long, then they heard it. Screamed human, but wrong, twisted. The soldiers froze as the sound echoed through the ruins, bouncing off steel and stone. It was a Marine's voice, one of the missing, begging for help, crying in agony. The squad leader raised a hand. Stay sharp, could be bait. But the scream came again, closer, desperate. Please, help me. It's inside. It's inside. The words were clear. The pain in the voice was real. Against orders, 2 soldiers moved ahead, weapons ready. They found the source seconds later, and what they saw froze the blood in their veins. It was the missing Marine, or at least, it looked like him.
Ice.
His face was twisted, his eyes black, his skin twitching unnaturally.
Ow.
Blood dripping from his mouth. His voice, human, broken, cried, "Help me." The soldiers hesitated. One raised his rifle, the other lowered his. That moment of doubt, barely a heartbeat, was all it took. The creature lunged. Its flesh split open. Claws erupted from its chest, where there should be none. The soldiers fired short. Sharp bursts, but one man went down screaming before the others shredded the creature into pieces. The squad fell back fast. Alarms blared. The alien survivors screamed and scattered. From the broken alleys and ruined streets, more shapes emerged. Twisted bodies, mocking human faces. Monsters wearing the flesh of the dead. The sky burned red as the soldiers opened fire. Plasma bolts lit the darkness. Explosions shattered the quiet. But for every creature they killed, more seemed to come. Hale's voice roared over the comms. Fall back. Form a hard line. Light 'em up. The soldiers pulled together, rifles blazing, turrets spitting death. The creatures howled, terrible, unnatural sounds as they fell. But the ground itself seemed to shift underfoot. The dirt cracked, the buildings groaned. Something deeper, something ancient was waking up. In orbit, Admiral Voss watched without. Blinking, the command crew looked to her. One word from her lips, and the fleet would unleash hell. But she stayed silent. Watching. Thinking. This wasn't just an infection. This wasn't just a threat. It was a trap, and something about it felt too precise, too calculated. The aliens had called for help. The monsters wore the faces of the dead. But what if neither were the real enemy? On the ground, the Marines held their line. The creatures retreated back into the shadows. For now, the squad counted their dead. 9 missing. 5 confirmed kills, if those things could even die. The aliens, what few remained, huddled in terror. And in the distance, far, beyond the ruined city, a new sound rumbled. Deep, distant. The ground trembled. Something massive was moving underground. The soldiers looked to the black sky above. Somewhere beyond the clouds, Earth's warships waited, but no one spoke of rescue. They all knew the truth. If the enemy reached orbit, if the infection spread, the fleet would end it the only way Earth knew how: fire, bombs, total destruction. The signal still played in the background, faint, broken. The words almost lost now: help us, or burn it all. The choice was coming, and time was running. Out! The air was heavy, thick with smoke, and the bitter scent of burning metal. The soldiers stood in silence, rifles ready, eyes scanning the shadows of the ruined city. The ground beneath their boots felt wrong soft, breathing almost, as if the soil itself were alive, somewhere out there, hidden in the fog and darkness. The enemy was waiting, watching, hunting, and every man and woman on that battlefield felt it deep in their bones. The real fight hadn't even started yet. "Sergeant." Hale's voice cut through the combs, low and steady, but edged with something cold, fear he would never show out loud. "Hold the line. Watch the ground. Watch each other. No one moves alone." His squad obeyed without hesitation. These were Deathworlders, Earth's finest. They had seen horror. They had faced monsters. But this was different. The creatures they fought weren't just predators. They were something worse. Something ancient. Something that wanted not just bodies, but minds, voices, faces. The alien survivors, those few frail creatures who had sent the original signal coward near the human defenses. Their wide, terrified eyes never stopped scanning the shadows. They muttered words the translators barely caught. "It comes when dark falls." The Marines didn't need the translation to understand the meaning. The enemy was close. The enemy was patient. And night was falling fast. Admiral Voss, aboard Titan's Wrath, stood like a statue as reports flooded in. Every screen showed pieces of the nightmare unfolding below. Strange seismic activity. Vanishing patrols. Heat signatures that appeared and vanished like ghosts. Her eyes narrowed. She had seen patterns like this before. On other worlds. Worlds that no longer existed. Her fingers tapped against the cold steel of her chair. She gave the order quietly. "Prepare Omega Protocol. We burn this world the moment." They breached the perimeter. Her crew obeyed without question. They knew the code. Omega Protocol meant total planetary cleansing. If the infection spread, Earth would erase the entire surface without hesitation. That was the way of the Deathworlders. Survive at any cost. Never let the infection reach home. On the surface, the night deepened. The fog rolled in thicker, swallowing the ruins. The soldiers' visors switched to thermal, but even the heat signatures glitched and flickered. Movement was everywhere, yet nothing showed clear. It was as if the entire city breathed alive, shifting, whispering secrets. In the dark, then the first scream came. Sharp, human, real. A forward scout, a Marine, vanished off the grid. His last words were pure panic. "It's under me. It's in the ground." Then static. Then silence. The squad moved fast, weapons raised, covering every angle. But the ground itself betrayed them. The dirt cracked. Black shapes erupted, upward twisted. Insect-like limbs with flesh that looked half metal, half bone. Faces of the dead stretched over alien skulls, eyes glowing with unnatural light. The monsters moved fast, too fast. Claws ripped through armor, teeth sank into flesh. The Marines fought like demons. Plasma fire lit the ruins. Explosions thundered. Turrets spat rivers of hot metal. But for every creature they cut down, 3 more emerged from the cracks. Though the aliens screamed and scattered. The sky glowed with fire as dropships launched emergency. Flares, illuminating the battlefield in red and gold, Sergeant Hale shouted orders through the chaos. "Fall back line. Fall back now, burn them." Heavy gunners opened up with flamethrowers, thick jets of liquid fire that set the creatures ablaze. The monsters howled, their bodies twisting in agony, but even fire didn't kill them fast enough. Some kept moving. Some crawled with melted limbs, and in the distance, the ground shook harder. From the command post, an image flickered through brief. Distorted deep beneath the city, a cavern, a nest, living mass of shifting flesh and bone. Hive. The intelligence behind the attack? The enemy wasn't just mindless beasts, it was something worse. Controlling mind, a queen, a god. Whatever name they gave it, the meaning was the same. Unless destroyed, it would rise. Admiral Voss heard the report. Her voice was ice. "Prep the singularity bomb," she ordered. "Target the hive. If ground teams fail, we finish this from orbit. She said the words without emotion, without doubt. That was Earth's way. Victory or extinction. On the battlefield, the soldiers fell back step by step, never turning their backs. The alien. Creatures struck from above, from below, from every angle. Screams echoed through the streets. The wounded were dragged to safety, when possible left behind when necessary. There was no room for weakness. No time for mercy. The Death Worlders had learned through endless wars that sometimes the only way to save lives was to end them. Aliens, the ones who had begged for help, watched with hollow eyes. Some wept. Some simply stared. They knew what was coming. They knew that even if the humans won, their world was already dead. In the heart of the city, the last squads dug in. Heavy barricades, energy shields, mech support units, the monsters, swarmed but met walls of steel and fire. The Marines fought with brutal efficiency, but still the enemy pressed closer. Sergeant Hale's voice was raw with rage. "We hold here, no matter what." And then the earth groaned. A deep, grinding sound. The very bones of the planet shifted. In the distance, a massive shape broke through the surface, something ancient, towering, crawling from the depths. Not just a monster, a titan, a god of flesh and death. The hive itself. Awakening, the soldiers stared in grim silence. Their hands tightened on their weapons. Above them, the sky burned with the glow of Earth's warships. The choice was coming. Fight or end it all in fire. And in the cold vacuum of orbit, Admiral Voss whispered what they all knew in their hearts. This is no rescue mission. The hunt had truly begun. The ground split open like the skin of a dying beast. Cracks spread in every direction, the ruins of the alien city shaking as something massive moved beneath. The air smelled of burning metal, rotting flesh, and ancient death. The Marines braced, themselves, weapons raised, eyes wide behind black visors. But even the most hardened soldiers felt it, the fear. The kind of fear that clawed at the mind and whispered, "You will not survive this." Sergeant Hale's boots shifted on the shaking earth. His voice came sharp and steady through the cums. "Hold position. Heavy weapons full spread. Mechs 2. The front," said the words like a man ordering a wall built against a tidal wave. But even as he spoke, the soldiers around him felt the hopelessness. The swarm was coming. The ground heaved again, then the surface erupted. From the crater at the center of the ruins, the hive emerged. It wasn't one creature. It was thousands, millions, a living mass of flesh, chitin, bone, and twisted faces. Insectoid horrors the size of tanks poured from the depths, claws clicking, jaws opening with sickening, wet shrieks.
Out.
Some moved on to many legs to count. Others slithered, wings buzzing, black slime dripping from teeth. And in the heart of it all, something bigger, something vast. A creature older than memory, its bloated body pulsing with sickly light eyes, glowing with cold intelligence. The hive mind. The soldiers opened fire instantly, plasma rounds, explosive shells, railgun strikes. The night lit up with flame and thunder. Alien bodies exploded under the assault, burning, shattering, but the swarm kept coming. Every creature that died was replaced by 10 more. The Marines dug in hard, setting up overlapping fields of fire, but the enemy moved like a living. Ocean rising, endless, unstoppable, from orbit. Admiral Voss stood motionless as the nightmare unfolded on the battle screens. Her sharp eyes scanned the data seismic readings, troop positions, enemy estimates. She saw the hive. She saw the numbers. And she knew. This was not a fight that could be won by bullets alone. Her voice came cold, measured. Begin final targeting. Prepare the singularity strike. Around her, officers moved quickly, hands trembling as they entered the codes. Once launched, the weapon would not stop, would tear the hive and the planet itself apart. Total annihilation. There was. Still time. Still a sliver of hope that the ground forces could reach the heart and plant the bomb manually, giving the survivors. and the soldiers a chance to escape. On the surface, Hale barked orders over the roar of battle. Push forward. Hit the center. We kill the brain, or we all die. His voice carried through smoke and gunfire. The Marines bloodied, bruised, some barely standing rallied. Earth's soldiers didn't quit. Even in the face of extinction, the alien refugees huddled in the ruins, helpless, their wide eyes filled with horror. They were witnessing not just a battle, but the death of their world. Some wept. Some prayed. Some simply closed their eyes, waiting for the end. The Marines fought like nothing else in the galaxy could. Mechs stomped through the enemy ranks, flamethrowers pouring rivers of fire across the creatures. Heavy gunners sprayed relentless streams of bullets and plasma. Snipers dropped anything that moved above the swarm, but the hive adapted. Every second, new forms emerged, faster, stronger, smarter. The hive was learning. The soldiers knew the truth. If the hive mind wasn't stopped soon, it would find a way to reach orbit. And if even a single spore, a single creature, made it aboard a ship Earth, would be next. The galaxy would follow. This wasn't about saving lives anymore. It was about survival, about erasure, about fire. Sergeant Hale led the charge through the crumbling streets. His squad moved fast, cutting down wave after wave, stepping over alien corpses that twitched even in death. Their objective was clear now, the heart of the crater. The core where the hive mind pulsed, its massive, grotesque body surrounded by rivers of black slime and twitching limbs. If they could reach it, if they could plant the bomb, the cums crackled. Admiral Voss's voice calm, distant. Ground teams, be advised. We are minutes from initiating orbital strike. You must reach the target or clear the zone. Hale's face was streaked with ash and blood. Copy that, he growled. We're going. The Marines pressed forward, every step a battle. Some soldiers fell. Some vanished under swarms of chittering claws. But others pushed on. Bullets ran dry. Blades were drawn. Hands burned on overheated rifle grips. Still they moved. Because they were Deathworlders. Because Earth did not fall above, in the cold void of space, the fleet readied the weapon. The Singularity bombed the last resort. Admiral Voss's fingers hovered over the final authorization switch. Her eyes hard, unblinking, watched the brave dots of light on her screen representing the surviving soldiers. She knew she would end them all if necessary. The good, the innocent, the brave. That was the cost of survival. On the battlefield, the hive shrieked. The ground shook as the massive body of the hive mind twisted, sensing the approaching humans. It unleashed a roar-high alien, mind-shattering. The sound made soldiers stumble, made aliens collapse in fear, but Hale didn't stop. When the few left standing pushed toward the heart, toward the nightmare, toward the one slim chance at victory. The Marines' visors flickered as the enemy jammed signals. The world blurred with fire and blood, but still they advanced. Time was almost gone, the end, one way or another, was coming. The ground was fire. The sky was ash. The world beneath Earth's fleet had become a living nightmare, and yet the Deathworlders stood their ground. The Marines, battered and bloodied, formed their last defense lines around the battered ruins. Holding back wave after wave of horror, the swarm never stopped. It came like a black tide, crawling, leaping, clawing, shrieking, and the soldiers fought with everything they had, knowing that if they failed, the price would be not just their lives, but the death of entire worlds. Sergeant Hale's voice was hoarse, half broken, but steady. He stood at the center of the chaos, his armor dented, his visor cracked, but his hands still tight on his rifle. Hold the line. He roared over the screams and explosions. No one falls back. We hold. Around him, what was left of his squad obeyed without question. Mechs burned through the enemy with torrents of fire. Auto turrets spat metal death. Snipers picked off the largest creatures as they charged. The ground underfoot was slick with black alien blood and the shattered remains of those who hadn't made it. The hive mind loomed in the distance, its bloated mass pulsing and twitching as more creatures poured from its body. The Marines had come close, so close to reaching it. The swarm had thickened, throwing everything it had into the slaughter. The humans knew the truth. This wasn't just an invasion. This was extinction in motion. If the hive broke through their lines and reached the sky, the infection would spread. Earth would be next. No other species in the galaxy would survive. Above them, in the cold silence of space, Admiral Voss stood motionless on the bridge of Titan's wrath. Her hands rested on the control panel, her sharp eyes never leaving the battle screens. The Singularity bomb was armed. The fleet's weapons were primed. One order from her, and the planet below would be wiped from existence. She knew the cost. She had given this order before on other worlds. She could give it again. Her voice, when it came, was cold as steel. Prepare to fire. Wait for my command. But still, she waited. She watched the ground teams. The Marines had not given up. They never gave up. As long as they fought, she held back the fire. The siege grew worse. The swarm changed. New forms emerged faster, stronger, armored creatures that shrugged off bullets. Some flew, razor-sharp, wings slicing through soldiers in midair. Others burrowed beneath the ground, bursting up beneath the defensive lines. The humans adapted fast plasma mines, incineration fields, kinetic barriers, but the enemy adapted faster. Every minute, the hive learned. Every minute, the odds grew worse. Sergeant Hale's squad was down to half strength. Faces he had known for years were gone, torn apart, melted, consumed, but still he fought, his hands shaking but steady. He fired until his rifle overheated, then drew his sidearm. When that ran dry, he switched to blades. His armor was scored, with claw marks. His blood ran down his neck. But his eyes burned with the cold fury of a man who refused to die easy. The alien survivors, those fragile, terrified beings who had called for help, huddled behind the Marines' defenses. Some sobbed. Some stared with hollow eyes, already broken by what they had witnessed. One of them, a small creature with silver fur clutched, broken relic in its hands, and whispered words the translator struggled to understand. It will take everything, unless the fire comes. The Marines knew. They had known from the start. This was not a battle they could win. This was a delay, sacrifice. By time for the fleet above to finish what the soldiers had begun, a tremor shook the ground. The hive mind stirred, its grotesque mass rising higher, tendrils stretching toward the sky. The air rippled as psychic waves poured from its swollen body, filling minds with whispers of hunger, of endless consumption. Some Marines stumbled, clutching their heads, but Hull forced himself to stand. His voice, ragged and torn, cut through the storm. We end this. We get the bomb to the heart. We finish it. A team of heavy-armored specialists, volunteers, assembled. Near the front, they carried the payload. A miniature Singularity warhead, too unstable to fire from orbit. It had to be placed manually, at the base of the hive. It was a suicide mission, and every soldier knew it. Hale locked eyes with them. No words were needed. They nodded once, and then they moved, pushing through the fire, through the claws, through the impossible above. Admiral Voss's breath caught for just a second as she watched the small blinking dot on her screen, the team moving toward the heart. A choice burned in her mind. She could give the order now, end it, kill everything. Or she could give them one last chance. Hold fire, she said quietly. The battle below raged on. Heavy team advanced step by brutal step, covered by the last of the Marine gunners. Mechs exploded. Turrets fell silent as ammunition ran dry. Soldiers screamed as claws dragged them down. But the team kept moving. The hive mind screamed in, unearthly, mind-shattering sound that cracked stone and rattled bones. It saw them. It knew, and it poured everything it had into the final defense. Hale emptied his last magazine into the swarm and drew his combat knife, standing atop a burning wreck. His voice roared through the coms. No mercy. No surrender. Fight. And the soldiers of Earth, bleeding, broken, and unbowdencered with fire. The Singularity team reached the edge of the crater. Time was almost gone, above, in the stars. The weapons of Earth waited. One breath. One heartbeat. The siege was reaching its final hour. The ground burned beneath their feet. The air was thick with smoke, screams, the endless clicking roar of the hive. Every breath the soldiers took was like breathing fire. The sky above was a dull red glow reflecting the fires of the dying world. But through the chaos, through the nightmare, the Singularity team kept moving step by step toward the heart of the hive. Sergeant Hale limped alongside them, his armor cracked, his body battered, but his eyes sharp with cold focus. Every second mattered. Every heartbeat brought them closer to either victory or total annihilation. Behind them, the Marines still standing fought like demons. Plasma fire, explosives, and steel tore into the endless swarm. They knew they weren't going home. Of them were, or they would not die quietly. The hive mind screamed again, louder this time. A deep, bone-shaking sound that made even the stone beneath their boots tremble. The ground split apart as monstrous forms erupted, larger than any before. Towering creatures twisted into shapes that defied reason eyes where there should be. None, limbs that stretched and twitched unnaturally. The hive was desperate now. It threw everything it had at the humans. The Singularity device, small, black, unremarkable, was cradled in the arms of a Marine named Reyes. His hands shook, not from fear but from exhaustion. He glanced once at Hale. No words were needed. They both knew. He would not make it back. The team broke through the last line of creatures, covering Reyes as he ran, stumbling, pushing forward with every ounce of strength left in his body. The hive mind loomed above him, grotesque, pulsating, eyes burning with unnatural light. It reached toward him with tendrils of wet, twitching flesh. But Reyes kept going. From the shattered ruins behind them, the last Marines poured cover fire. Heavy guns thundered. Mechs nearly destroyed, crawled on broken limbs to unleash one final barrage. The alien survivors, those few fragile creatures, watched in silence, their wide eyes reflecting the flames. They knew this was the end. Their world. For the soldiers. For everything above, in the cold void of space, Admiral Voss stood frozen. Her hand hovered over the command switch. The Singularity bomb was armed. The fleet could fire at any moment. Her crew looked to her eyes, tight with fear, with duty, but she held back. Her voice was a whisper. Come on, Reyes. Reached the base of the hive. The ground beneath him heaved, split, bled black. The hive mind's shriek tore through the sky. Reyes screamed a pure rage, pure defiance as he slammed the device down, locking it into place. Detonator set. He shouted through the cums. His voice was breaking, his breath ragged. Get them out. The words cut off as the hive struck. A massive tendril impaled him through the chest, lifting him into the air. But his hand never left the trigger. His last breath was a whisper, for Earth. The explosion that followed was silent for the first instant. A ripple, a distortion. The hive mind's scream cut off abruptly, its vast bloated form twitching, in confusion and then collapse. The Singularity cord triggered, a sphere of collapsing gravity pulling everything inward. Flesh, bone, metal sucked into a growing black tear in reality. The ground shook violently. Craters split wide open. The swarm shrieked, howled, and then disintegrated. Creatures fell to pieces mid-charge. Bodies crumpled into dust. The hive's mind, its control snapped like a broken thread in orbit. Alarms blared. The fleets. Computers warned of gravitational instability, of planetary core failure. Admiral Voss gave the order without hesitation. All ships pull back. Emergency FTL prep. Now. The black hole forming at the heart of the dying world would consume everything. And if they stayed too long, the fleet would be dragged into. Oblivion on the ground, the Marines staggered. Some collapsed. Some simply stared as the impossible unfolded before them. The hive mind writhed in its death throes, vast portions of its grotesque body vanishing into the Singularity. The sky itself, twisted, clouds spiraling as the atmosphere began to break apart. Sergeant Hale's voice was barely a whisper now. His suit was failing. his body giving in. But he raised one bloody hand and signaled. The surviving Marines, what few remained, activated emergency evac beacons. Dropships, sleek and black, tore through the burning clouds, racing to pick them up. The alien survivors, thin, trembling, looked up in awe and terror, in silence. Their world was ending. But for a brief moment, they had been saved by monsters of another kind, by Earth's death worlders. The last dropship's engines roared. As it lifted from the crumbling ground, inside, the wounded and broken soldiers lay slumped, watching through cracked visors as the hive collapsed, completely devoured by the artificial singularity, dragged into a darkness from which nothing would ever return. Admiral Voss watched from orbit as the planet's surface twisted into ruin. Her face was pale, but her voice calm. Set course. We're done here. The fleet turned silently, engines flaring as they vanished into the cold black of space. Below them, the dying world shuddered one final time. There was no more. The planet was gone. Nothing remained but dust, broken rock, and the faint glow of a fading singularity. The hive, its endless swarm, the dying cities, even the desperate cries of the last alien survivors, is erased in moments. The black hole had swallowed it all, sealing the nightmare in darkness forever. And high above, the Death Worlder fleet drifted in silence. Engines cold, weapons still hot, as the soldiers stared at the empty place where a world had been. Inside the command deck of Titan's Wrath, Admiral Voss stood alone, her hands locked behind her back, her face carved from stone. The stars reflected cold light in her eyes, but her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. Mission complete. Log the event. No survivors. No infection breach. Officers moved with quiet hands, typing commands, recording the impossible. No one spoke of victory. There was no celebration, because this wasn't a war won. It was a horror contained. A future prevented. The price had been too high. The weight of it pressed down on every soul aboard the fleet, in the medbay of one of the returning ships. The survivors lay still. Less than a dozen Marines, faces pale, armor blackened, some still unconscious, some staring blankly at the ceiling. Sergeant Hale sat slumped against the wall, his hands shaking despite himself. Floor, as if he still saw the dying world, still heard the hive's last scream. He wasn't sure if it would ever stop echoing in his mind. The medics moved quietly, treating wounds, giving soft words of comfort that felt empty in the cold steel corridors. The soldiers barely spoke. Those who did spoke in whispers, haunted voices, as if saying the words too loud might bring the nightmare back. Above them all, the stars stretched wide and endless, cold and uncaring. Admiral Voss entered the medbay without a sound. Her presence was like a shadow. The soldier stiffened but said nothing. She moved to Hale, her eyes scanning him, then the others. She gave a small nod, respectful, distant. "You held the line?" she said softly. "You did what no one else could." Hale's voice was rough, cracked. "Did we win?" The Admiral's eyes hardened. She didn't lie. "No, we survived. That's enough." The words hung in the air like iron. The fleet moved silently through the black. The ruined planet, if it could even be called that, drifted far behind them, already fading into the distance. The official logs would mark it as another containment success. Another infection burned away before it could spread. The galaxy would never know how close it had come to total extinction, but the soldiers would know. The Death Worlders who had looked into the face of something ancient and endless and survived. Days passed in stillness. Repairs began. Armor was cleaned, weapons reset. But something remained in the eyes of every Marine. Shadow, a silence that could not be erased. In private quarters, Admiral Voss sat alone, her gaze locked on a single screen. She replayed the last moments of the battle again and again, the detonation, the collapse, the black hole consuming the hive. But her eyes were not on the explosion. They were on a single frame, flicker caught by the dying cameras. A shape, a signal, A whisper. Her breath caught as she stared. The hive. It had sent something. In those last seconds, before destruction, it had fired something outward. A single stream of data. A transmission not to Earth, to somewhere else. Voss's. Hand trembled for the first time in years as she slowly shut off the screen. She sat back, her heart cold. The nightmare wasn't over. The hive had been only the beginning. And somewhere in the deep, somewhere beyond even Earth's reach, something had heard the signal. The fleet drifted on through the stars, silent, waiting, and far away, in the cold darkness between galaxies, something old began to stir. The warships hung silent in orbit, black against the burning clouds of the dying world. From space, the planet looked like it was bleeding. Rivers of molten rock glowed through deep cracks in the crust. Smoke poured into the sky from ruined cities, and whole continents lay shattered. The alien signal still whispered in the ears of the fleet, broken, desperate, filled with terror. But now that signal had taken on a darker meaning. A ground squad had gone silent. No trace, no warning, only screams and then static. Admiral. Kayla Voss stood motionless on the bridge of Titan's Wrath. Her eyes were locked on the live feed from the surface. Flames flickered across the ruins. The alien survivors, small, fragile beings, huddled together in the shadows of broken towers. Their bodies trembled with fear, their eyes wide with horror. But it wasn't the humans they feared. It was something else, something unseen. The Admiral's voice was quiet but sharp as steel. Deploy full combat teams. No mercy, no hesitation. We find the threat. We end it. The fleet came alive. Hundreds of dropships launched like black daggers through the thick clouds. Inside, Earth's finest soldiers sat in silence, Deathworld Marines. Hard faces, cold eyes, no emotion. Their armor gleamed dark under the lights, weapons resting in steady hands. These men and women were not heroes. They were survivors. Trained. For one thing, total war. No negotiation, no retreat. The galaxy feared them for a reason. And now, that fear would once again be justified. The first wave landed near the ruins where the missing squad had vanished. The air was toxic. The ground was cracked, steaming. Towering structures, once alien cities now, lay twisted and blackened. The Marines moved with precision, sweeping the area, visors scanning every shadow. The small alien creatures, thin and trembling, peeked from hiding spots but made no move to approach. Their fur was matted. Their faces were blank with fear.
L1.
Marine knelt, extending a hand. The alien whimpered, backed away. Its eyes were fixed, not on the humans, but on the darkness behind them. Eyes open, the squad leader growled. His voice was low, controlled. Something's here. There. Scared of it? His words barely hung in the air when one of the motion detectors beeped. Movement. Fast. Underground, the soldiers froze. The soil shifted barely. A soft ripple under the dirt. Then stillness. The soldiers tightened their formation. Tension clawed at their nerves. The last time they had seen this, it had ended badly. Hours passed. The ground teams pushed deeper into the ruins. More alien survivors were found, some wounded, some too far gone to speak. The translation A is struggled to pull meaning from their broken voices. But three words kept repeating over and over in different forms. It is hunting.
Ow.
In the command center aboard Titan's Wrath, Admiral Voss leaned over the main screen. The planet's surface stretched before her in cold, detailed heat signatures. Motion sensors, seismic scans. Yet no clear enemy appeared. Whatever had torn apart this world, it was hiding well. Too well. And that, she knew, made it worse. Much worse. A young officer spoke softly, voice trembling. Should we consider planetary cleansing before it spreads? The Admiral's eyes were hard as iron. She remembered other worlds, other signals, other moments when Earth had hesitated, when they had believed the lies of alien mouths, too terrified to tell the full truth. The price of that hesitation had been entire cities burned, millions dead. Never again. Not yet, she said coldly. But prepare the strike packages. If I give the word glass, it back on the ground. The Marines set up fortified positions. Automated turrets locked into place. Sensors scanned the dark alleys and broken streets. The soldiers worked in grim silence, but they could feel it though watching. Something unseen moved in the shadows. Something ancient. Something that wasn't afraid of them. Night fell quickly on the dying world. The sky turned black, lit only by the red glow of distant fires. Soldiers' visors adjusted to the darkness, but the weight of dread pressed down heavier with each passing hour. Then movement. A distant scream. Not human, not animal. Something wrong. The teams tightened, their grips on their rifles. Somewhere deep in the ruins, something howled, low, bone deep, hungry. A distress beacon from one of the forward squads flared on. They were under attack. The feed came through shaky, broken. The soldiers' cameras showed only flashes. Dark. Shapes. Claws. Teeth. Screams. The line went dead, without hesitation. Code red. Full combat authorization. Prepare for planetary purge if necessary. The cold efficiency in her words told the soldiers everything they needed to know. Earth would not allow this threat to escape. The lives of the aliens were secondary. The lives of the Marines were secondary. What mattered was the mission: contain or destroy. The ground forces regrouped. More drop pods slammed into the planet's surface, unloading heavy weapons, mechs, and armored divisions. In the darkness beyond their searchlights, the soil shifted. Eyes, dozens of them, reflected the light for a heartbeat, then vanished. The Marines opened fire, heavy rounds cutting through rubble and stone. But there was nothing there, only silence. The hunters had vanished like smoke. The alien survivors cowered, pointing toward the ground, their thin fingers shaking. The translations were clearer now. Not from here, not alive. Stoppable. One alien collapsed in the arms of a medic, whispering the last words over and over. It will take all who stay. Above in orbit, Admiral Voss watched. In silence, her face was expressionless, her hands steady. The order burned in her mind already, waiting on her tongue. The fleet could wipe the entire surface clean in hours. Erase the threat, erase everything. But something held her back. What if the signal wasn't a call for rescue, but bait? The stars outside the viewports glowed cold. The planet below burned. And somewhere in the ruins of the dying world, the true enemy waited.